As we continue in our series of Tom Reed and his family, taking excerpts in this video from the book The Salvager, The Life of Captain Tom Reed on the Great Lakes, we find Tom returning from another one of his salvaging trips, and we'll pick up the book in chapter 16. Home again, Tom found Anna deeply troubled. Helen had become seriously interested in a Detroit man, Ray Hamilton Krager, and contemplated marriage, and Helen was not too well. Argument had proved futile, and after Anna had persuaded herself to accept the inevitable, she set about making wedding plans. There was a brief, decisive scene in which she reminded Tom that he had invariably failed her in moments of crisis. Nothing must prevent his attendance at the wedding. If he failed her this time. But he promised, adding that no expense was to be spared. More than that, he would provide a surprise that would thrill them all and make up for the disappointments of the past. Familiar with his generosity, fantastic possibilities suggested themselves. What could the surprise be? Diamonds? New cars? But they never dreamed of such a thing as the Ramona. She was a small steel ship of 59 tons, built back in 1886, built at a cost of $20,000 by the Canadian Starch Company at Cardinal, Ontario, for commercial purposes. She was destined to become the Reed yacht in 1920. Now he set about making her not only completely seaworthy, but as attractive as possible, according to his conception of beauty. June came, and the wedding day. Early in the festivities at the Reed summer home on Lake Huron shore, Tom quietly withdrew. Driving swiftly a few miles down to Port Huron Black River, he went aboard the Ramona, where a small crew waited, cast off, and started up the shore. There was music in the Reed garden, dancing in the tent. It suddenly occurred to Anna that she had not seen Tom for quite a while, and someone was drawing attention to a small steamer not far offshore. Great rolls of heavy black smoke pouring from her stack, and someone else was bewheeling the shower of soot that fell on organdy and taffeta and flower-decked hats. Now the little steamer slowed and stopped. Anchors were thrown out and a dory set off toward shore, heading directly toward the Reed place. At the oars sat Tom, coatless, sleeves rolled up, long arms bending savagely to the task, the hot sun burning his drenched, blackened face. Reaching the beach, he stepped out and into the water, of course, pulled the dory up on the sand, and called to his wife, "There you are, Anna. There's your surprise. It's your yacht." In this photo here, of course, it would have been taken later. I can see that perhaps Tom took his family out for an outing and some friends. There's quite a few people on board. And that might even be Tom at the wheel and Anna beside him. She managed to smile, to beckon to him, and Tom Reed, looking more like one of his deckhands than host at a fashionable wedding reception, went to her with an uneasy little boy's smile. She drew him into the house. The day had been a strain, but she could not hurt him, any more than she could a child who had blunderingly tried to please her. "The people are beginning to leave, Tom," she told him. "Freshen up a bit and come down." "You don't like it, do you, Anna?" he sighed. "You don't like the yacht." "Why, I haven't had a chance to look at it, Tom." "There's time for that later. Helen is changing to leave on her trip." After all had gone, she watched him as he climbed into the skiff and rowed back to the Ramona. Down in her heart, she would have loved to board that crazy boat and go with him. That reckless, loving redhead who never knew what it was to care what the other fellow thought. He was free. Later that summer, the Ramona lay at a dock in Sarnia. It was a temporary arrangement, and Tom had plans for shifting her to a more desirable spot when, as usual, he was called away on business. Though not unaware of the dock's owner's unsavory reputation, he had never encountered any particular evidence of wrongdoing until the incident of the Ramona. Though summoned just before the bride's return, which was to be observed by an evening affair, He promised solemnly to be on hand for it. In the meantime, it happened that some boys, swimming along the Canadian shore and spying numerous cases of liquor piled high in the cabins, passed the word along the Sarnia docks, and word reached the police. It was a matter of unfortunate timing. Only a few hours after the boys' discovery, the cargo would have been quietly transferred by its nefarious owner from a ship above suspicion to a well-disguised rum runner. Unaware what had happened to his ship, Tom was back home enjoying the festivities when a maid announced the arrival of the police. There was a violent scene, but they carried off the profanely protesting Tom. Tom would have been taken to the police station, which was on Broad Street in Port Huron, which is right about where McMorran Auditorium is today, and you can see a photo of it here. It was proven that his yacht had been used without his knowledge as a temporary storage space for bootleggers. A miscarriage of plans due to boyish curiosity had been the cause of it all. Through this incident, however, certain Chicago gangsters were apprehended, though Anna failed to find it amusing that her husband was accused of rum running when liquor was seldom seen in their home. The post-bridal affair was not mentioned again. The Reed family had put that incident behind them, and Tom was doing very well in the salvaging business. He was quite prosperous, and we'll pick up the story here. The Reed Company felt the warm glow of this prosperity, and Tom Reed had struck a tempo that suited his restless, tireless nature. At the fine home on Military Street, a special room had been constructed overlooking the river. One wall of glass, handsome carved paneling, rugs, lamps, luxuriously comfortable chairs, and all this for Tom's leisure hours. Leisure. Tom and his brother Will had bought the family theater in Port Huron, a sound investment. Tom's big Packard never went under a roof, always ready for the takeoff, a familiar sight as it flashed in and out of town, up and down the river road. He had established Tom as a manager of a local coal dock in which he had controlling interests, but industry still beckoned the son, and Tom knew that the boy would eventually take over the management of his own life. There was a girl in Chicago whose father had plans for him too. It was hard to accept, but Tom was learning to meet the inevitable. The coal company that Tom's son became manager of was the J.E. Miller Coal Company, J.E. Miller and Son, and that was on Military Street. The docks were on Military Street, the office was on Huron Avenue. But the docks had been south of where the Reeds lived, but eventually his son Tom had a home right near the coal docks, so it wasn't too far away from his family. There's been several instances where Tom and Anna had their spats, and I haven't really covered those because it's pretty hard to illustrate those. But I think you might enjoy this one, and I can illustrate it somewhat. Anna had just had another argument with Tom about his being away so much and the loneliness that she suffered, but to no avail. Fighting tears, she dressed for the street and stormed out of the house into the crisp March air, flouncing along, nursing her grievances. She felt the core of spring in the wind, saw the hint of yellow where forsythia bushes burgeoned, caught sight of swelling buds, the lilac and the pussy willow, and by the time she reached the bridge, spring had exercised its magic. In Nils' drugstore window was displayed, among others, a box of Hoya de Monterey cigars, Tom's favorite. Spring sent her in, sent her, too, into Ballantyne's store for some new shirts for Tom's drawer. At that time, the Ballantyne store was actually next door to Nils. We're familiar with it looking like this in our generation, where it took up the whole corner. But at that time, it was just immediately north of Nils' drugstore, and they didn't have that whole corner. It was really quite a hike for her to walk that far. I mean, probably 11, 12 blocks. And I think she just wanted to blow off a little steam. She could have easily taken a streetcar. As you can see, there's one going right through town, and there's also one going right by her door, right down Military Street. But judging from what we just read, I think Anna enjoyed the walk. After Valentine's, Anna Reed went laughing secretly down Military Street toward home, pausing at Allenbrook's for a bunch of violets that nodded to her from the window. At that time, Allenbrook's wasn't on Lapeer Avenue. It was on Military Street. It was right across the street from the Harrington Hotel. "Where have you been?" shouted Tom as she opened the door. He came thundering down the stairs, and "Where the heck is my bag? If you just leave things alone and not try to be so neat. Hey, what are you laughing at? What's so funny? And where'd you get those violets? Go and finish shaving. You look like Ichabod Crane." He cleared the remaining stairs in a leap. "What's got into you? Where have you been? Who've you been with?" "I can have a few secrets of my own, too." She tossed him the box of cigars. He ripped off the wrapping. "Just what I need. Well, I'm off again. Steel Trust boat, the Whittler. I thought the Great Lakes wrecking people had been working on her. They've given up. Do you think you can do the impossible? For $75,000 I can. That or 75% of the ship and cargo. Will it take long? Plenty. Good. Now I'll have a little peace." "What's got into you?" he laughed. But he was uneasy, annoyed at the twinge of jealousy and disturbing stab of guilt. She was a poor actress. She looked up at him with the clear-eyed smile of the sinless. "Do you think you're the only man in the world, Tom Reed?" "I'd better be, for you." He was rough, possessive. She loved it as she laughed against his heart. Even when Anna was mad at Tom, she bought him gifts. I think that walk did her a lot of good. Tom was able to do the impossible. He was able to salvage a Whittler and made a nice profit doing so. Tom's satisfaction at the success of the undertaking sent him home happy, his bag bulging with gifts. But it was to meet the first great sorrow of his married life. Helen had died in her sleep only an hour before. Unwilling to leave Anna alone with her sorrow so soon after their loss, he insisted that she accompany him when he called to Port Colborne, Ontario, a couple of weeks later. He was to salvage the little wooden steamer India, and that concern may have been the means of saving her life. It was shortly afterward that one of Port Huron's greatest tragedies occurred, the explosion of the ferry boat Omar D. Conger in Black River, a stream which bisects the heart of the town. On a Sunday afternoon at the Falk Funeral Home, services for a close family friend were in progress. Anna most certainly would have been in attendance. A roar shook the town, and almost at once a radiator came crashing through a window of the building. Several mourners were badly hurt, one blinded. The room was practically demolished. The Conger's boiler, it developed, had been blown from the ship. The largest section crushed a house less than a block away. 4 people were killed. Later, Tom Reed was to salvage the Conger. But now his immediate concern was for the $50,000 wooden ship India, sunk in Lock 15 of the Welland Canal, and delaying navigation east to the St. Lawrence River and the sea. The incident that the book was referring to regarding the radiator crashing into the funeral home is shown in this newspaper clipping, where it says the explosion took place as the vessel was tied at the wharf. The 4 men killed were members of the crew, and 6 of the 7 injured were attending funeral services in an undertaking establishment 600 feet from the river. A radiator was blown from the vessel and crashed through a window into the throng. Windows in all parts of the city were shattered. At that time, the Falk Funeral Home was located on Military Street, the 900 block, as designated by the red rectangle. And you can see the explosion occurred where the yellow is on the Black River. It was a good little distance for a radiator to fly through the air. Originally, the Conger used the dock right near the Military Street Bridge. It almost butted up against the bridge, as you can see in this picture here. But at the time of the explosion, it set much further back, as you can see in this photo. I believe this is about where it was sitting at the time of the explosion. There was generally 4 ferries running. As you can see here, the Congaree dock, and in front of that you can see the Grace Dormer. And then the Hiawatha's heading out, and probably coming from Sarnia would have been the James Beard. At the time of the explosion, the Hiawatha was docked right in front of the Congaree. And you can see it here, and you can see that it also suffered some structural damage. I covered the Omar Congaree, its history, and also its demise in one of my previous videos, part 38, if you'd like to go back to that and find out more about it. In our next video, we'll see that Anna leaves the home that she loved so much on Military Street and moves to Toronto.